Now, obviously, keeping tabs on the different performance counters on our systems is only one of the variety of tasks we have to do as an IT pro. Yet another is making sure that we understand what's going on in the event logs on those very same servers. In fact, back here on file 1, let's take a look at the event viewer on this machine. I'll bring up the event viewer here so we can just get an idea for the very basics about how we might use event viewer to see what kinds of events are being generated. When you first bring up Event Viewer, one of the best initial views, if you know that something is wrong on a machine, is right here in this Summary of Administrative Events. This is one view that takes a variety of the different important event logs and then chunks them out by various periods of time, by events that have occurred in the last hour, the last day, or the last week. And so this could be a great starting point for trying to trace down the root cause of a problem when you know when that problem occurred. So let's say the problem occurred in the last hour and you know it's some sort of error. Well, you can come over here under error, expand the view, and then identify, well, exactly which error occurred in the last hour. Once you find what you're looking for, if you double click, that will give you a short view here of all the instances of that error that have occurred in as long as the log has been keeping data. We can see here that the WD-SIM GSRV source has popped up in event ID 266 here. If I go back, I can scroll down to one of the other events that have occurred in the last hour, like the net logon problem that we see here. And if I click net logon, you'll see that actually 5 instances of this particular event ID have popped up in the last week or two. So again, if you have an idea of when the problem occurred, this is a great starting point for helping you trace down to a specific event log error that may clue you towards that root cause. Now, most of us are familiar with the traditional Windows event logs that exist over here under Windows Logs. These are the application log, the security log, the system log, and then the much smaller setup log. These event logs have been around for the entirety of the Windows operating system. But in recent OS versions, Microsoft has taken the opportunity to kind of deconsolidate some of these event logs into a much longer list of service or component-oriented logs down here under Applications and Services. If you scroll down here and then open up under Microsoft and Windows, you can see a very large list of all the applications and services logs that now exist here in Server 2012 R2. And in fact, if you kind of just scroll through all these, you'll find that the variety of logs you see here are generally, not always, but generally broken down into 2 different subcategories of log events as well. Now, not all of these have the separation of these 2 types of log events. This one doesn't, the DHCP client does here, where the individual log events are broken into the administrative events, as opposed to here on the bottom, the operational events. Now, the biggest difference here is that your admin events are kind of your higher order events. DHCP client isn't working today. As opposed to over on the operational side, these would be the more trace-oriented events. They're very specific things. And in many cases, the operational events often don't include any information at all unless you turn them on. You can see we don't have any here for DHCP client events, but we do have a couple of admin events over here, at least one over here. So this gives you a feel for just the different kinds of events that can occur here as you start breaking them apart into this large number of subcategories. If you know what kind of event you're looking for, if you have a feel for where the problem occurs, this separation of events into these large number of categories actually makes things quite a bit easier. But the problem happens, however, when you have that situation where you don't exactly know where the problem is. You know something's wrong on your server, but trying to scroll through all these long lists of events is something you just don't want to do. Well, Microsoft has also built into here, for this and other reasons, the abilities to create your own custom views over here. These custom views provide a way for you to identify the kinds of events you're looking for, the specific keywords associated with those events, and then to consolidate that information together into a single view that you can access at any time. Let's right-click here to create a custom view that we can now filter based off of the kinds of events that we're interested in. Let's say, for example, that we're interested in, the critical events that have occurred in the last 30 days that are associated with any of the event logs here. The application event log, for example. Notice here that I can do the traditional event logs as well as the applications and services log if I want to get down to that granular level of detail. I could also, if I'm less interested in where the event is, but what the event is, filter this not by the log, but instead of by the source. So this list of possible sources is actually dynamically created by all the different events that currently exist in the log itself. So there will be events associated with these different sources that exist in the logs. This gives you the ability to then identify not necessarily where the event exists, but the fact that it does exist. I can tailor even further down here by focusing on event IDs and task categories, even specific keywords if I want. And if you wanted to get really crazy and you had some familiarity with the use of the XPath query format, you could create an XPath query, an XML-based query, to define a more complex set of rules that will create that filter for creating your custom view. Once you've defined what your filter is here, you can click the OK button and then give your view a name, our view. Put it in a location and hit OK to go about creating that view. Now, obviously we've not got any events here, which can actually be a good thing based off of what characteristics we're interested in for this view. But what I really want to show you is that once you've created these views, it's actually easy to then export these views out of this machine and then import them into some other machine somewhere else. So once you create a view, if you've got one you really like, you'll see here you can export and then import in that custom view into other servers to be able to see that view of the different event log entries you've found. I should mention also that similar to how we attached tasks to different perfbond counters, it's also possible here to attach tasks to custom views as well. So if you know that a particular event log entry occurs, you can define some sort of action, usually a PowerShell script, that would execute when a particular event gets logged. So if you know that a particular event ID causes your server to explode, you might set yourself up a little task here to notify yourself when indeed that event occurs.